and welcome to a brand new mega series. This is going to be called Wonder Frontiers, and it's going to be the largest park I can make with my computer. That is basically my challenge here. But the other challenge is I'm making this a storytelling park. So I used to do these all the time back when I played Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and had a lot more time on my hands. And I primarily made my parks around this fictional company called Wonder Thrills Entertainment. And that was based off my very first park called Wonder Lake, which you can see here on my super old YouTube channel that I no longer obviously post to. So this park is going to be a historical park as well, and it's going to be loosely historic. I'm not going to be like trying to do everything perfect, but I'm going to try to hit most of the major marks. With that being said, this park is built probably in the early 80s. I would suggest being planned in the late 70s, so you're going to have some 70s elements and rides that would be coming out in the early 80s. And also very similar themes. I know Americana themes were huge back then in American parks, so I'm going to be kind of building the foundation from there. Before I get into Wonder Thrills Entertainment Company and kind of the portfolio that park has, there's two important things we got to discuss. The first thing is, this was really the foundation of the Coaster Wars. This is a little earlier, like the heat of the theme park wars was really, in my opinion, the 90s, like late 90s into the early 2000s. You have, parks like Cedar Point building Millennium Force and Top Thrill Dragster in the very early 2000s. Cedar Point was like the peak of all these massive roller coasters, and I'm not quite going for a mega park here. We're going for more of a contemporary, just generic park that's going to have some record-breaking rides, some large coasters, but also focusing on families. The next important part of this discussion is the location of this park, which will make a lot more sense why this will be a generic park here in a second. So, when I picked this map, you obviously can see we have so many hills and all this kind of stuff all around us. It's very mountainous and kind of the foothills of the mountains, I should say. So that got me thinking, I'm gonna go ahead and use this map's advantages to my advantage. Unlike my last project with Bumblebee Beach Adventure Park, I had to make a beach on this contemporary, or the tropical map, and there's mountains and stuff. I decided to play with the terrain here and actually go with that and roll with it. So, that being said, I picked some areas mostly on the East Coast that I thought would be really good, and eventually narrowed down to Tennessee. I didn't know this at the time, but I actually talked to a friend who actively lives in Nashville right now, and he's a champ. He actually reached out to like 4 or 5 of his friends, including his brother and his wife, and asked where would a good location for a theme park be in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee. This was before I knew I wanted to make it a park based in the 80s. But a key piece of information before I dive into these texts. Nashville actually used to have a theme park, for y'all that don't know. It was called Opryland.
Wow.
That was around from the 70s until the 90s. So that's a pivotal piece of information for this. We know if you look into where that location is at, it's in the northeast side of Nashville, as you can see here on the screen. So, going through some of these text messages, I had to really keep that in mind. This one individual said Smyrna would be best, splitting the difference between Murfreesboro and Nashville. Spring Hill was also another suggestion, and Dickerson. The next one was off of 24, which was built in the late 60s and finishing in the early 70s. Right next to the Tanger Outlets, which I don't know if would have existed as of me recording this back in the early 70s. What I decided to go with was actually the Tanger Outlets, which is down here, southeast of Nashville, right in this area. There's some flatter land, as you can see the typography is coming down a little bit through here. I don't know what all this would have looked like in the 80s, but I'm going to suggest it's over in this plot of land right here, more like an Apple Valley area. So, that's all loose suggestions here. This is a video game after all, it's not going to be perfect. We have a nice highway system kind of wrapping around this map here, so it's not going to be perfect to what's on there exactly, but as you can see, I've kind of been working on this with all these pieces. So that is the foundation of the park here, and I know I'm talking a lot. If you're not interested in this, you can totally skip ahead, but I think it's important to set the tone for this park. So going back to Wonder Thrills Entertainment Company, Wonder Thrills started probably in the late 60s, early 60s, somewhere along those. I don't have that exactly fleshed out. But it started with Wonder Lake and eventually expanded out into about 5 or 6 other parks in the early 90s with Wonder Lake and a couple other parks that I don't remember the names. But my goal kind of with this is to expand that portfolio, reaching back to the early days of Wonder Thrills Entertainment. So Wonder Frontier is the second ever park owned by Wonder Thrills Entertainment Company, kind of forming that portfolio. Knowing that Opryland was going strong in the 70s, Wonder Thrills decided to take out a big risk here, get a huge loan, buy about 400 acres of land. This is a huge plot of land, and try to build a park that would compete and take down Opryland. As we know, Opryland closed in the 90s, and unfortunately, in real life, Opryland closed to become Opry Mills, which is a mall. Not my favorite thing. People apparently still complain about it, and even talking to my friend, many of his friends wishes Nashville had a major theme park. So I figured, why not capitalize on that, and we're going to go head-to-head with Opryland in this story and just see if they can one-up them in every front. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what we got going on here. There's not much to talk about. This is an early stage build here of the parking lot. I'm going to go ahead and expand a preferred parking area, which wasn't really a thing back then, but I decided to do that anyway before making this a story park. So we'll have that added here. We're going to have a bus lane over here, and our lovely entrance is going to go right here in the middle of this. So enough talking. Let's go ahead and go to the next step in the build here and show off the enhancements to this parking area. Boom, look at that. There's more parking magically and pathways. And we also have something over here. Ooh, so cool. We've also added some arrows and added more detail to this road right here, the exit off of the highway to get over here. Real quick, something over here too is obviously don't have the room to build, but I would imagine there is another exit that kind of winds over here, connects to some kind of city area, and then eventually just flows directly in here. And that would be like the major route that they expected people to come through, and this is the smaller route that people come through. So it just depends on what direction you're coming from getting into the park here. But we obviously have way more traffic flow with 6 lanes here, ultimately becoming 5 because this left lane is going to be a bus lane eventually. But that's a lot of lanes kind of filing into 3 and then 2 eventually. So while we're talking about that, let's go ahead and look over here if I can get the right camera going here. This will change a little bit color scheme wise, but we can see that we have this lovely ticket booth. I tried to make it look as 70s and Americana as possible. I basically directly stole from Carowinds, their ticket booths that they currently have, which are a lot more flat. This is made with just like 3D shapes. It's a lot of pieces. It's something like 600 pieces, I think. 300. But yeah, we have everything here is custom. We have the little screens here, which is not era appropriate, but we have the screens here, the glass, and then we have this little ticket entrance thing with the electric coming up here. So a lot of detail that I put into the park here. I also love this roof. It's just a wood tile going through here, and then it's masked by this brick piece. And then we have this lovely 3D embellishment here. And then the iron fence, of course. So the primary colors of Wonder Thrills is actually red and blue. So this will change to reflect that in the future here shortly. We also have these custom-made traffic cones. These are a lot of pieces, 32, as you multiply them going through. There's a ton in the parking lot in the future builds. And we also have this lane just closed, because why not? So there's that. And eventually we're going to add a bus lane that kind of goes around here, which I'll show that off in the next update. It is worth mentioning that I got these arrows and all this off of the workshop, and I've used that actually in Bumblebee Beach as well. Same for these stop signs that we're going to see kind of going throughout all of this. So there's a lot more detail that I add later with this parking lot build, and I'll touch on that here shortly. But you can see here's the preferred parking area. Once again, I built this before making this era appropriate, so I don't think you'd be seeing this in early theme parks, but I'm just going to keep it because eventually this park is going to be a modern park, so I'm keeping that for now. Just pretend with me that that's just normal parking. But anyways, yeah, there is those details with that. We obviously added this parking lot and a lot of trees and stuff, so it's pretty easy. One more thing I want to add before moving on to the next update is this little area over here. I didn't mention this in the first video, but this is just like some farmland, I'm assuming, just farmhouses that still survived the buyout for the land. And that might, depending on if my computer actually can handle it, this land might become important. We'll see. This is a lot of land to play with over here. But we have this lovely tree forest barrier kind of separating the park and what's left over of these people's farmland. So I would put crops here, but quite frankly, I don't feel like destroying my PC before I even get the park going. So we're just going to imagine this is some leftover farmland. All right, that's all I got for this update. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one. So the first and foremost, here is the color update. We just made this a little more muted, as you'd see more in that era of time. And then we also added this bus lane, which is a little bit wider. I think this is 6 meters or 7 meters wide. Actually, it might be 8. But anyways, this bus lane goes all the way around now and pours off here. And then now we have a bus lot over here. So you just go straight through here and then take a left. And then we have a big old bus lot that is not super detailed, but that's because I'm not spending much time over here when I'm playing the game. So it doesn't need to be as detailed and having all these pieces. But if you also look at different examples of bus lots, they're usually just slabs of concrete. There's not much going on. The paint's kind of worn down everywhere. So I kind of figured I would make that way and make it a little more realistic. So one problem I had with Bumblebee Beach is I had the sidewalks connected to the road, and guests would walk on the road and go in the parking lot and get all lost. So this time around, I'll just do this real quick because it's not really super effective, but we have these 3D blocks here just masking the difference between the path and the concrete. And I think it does a really great effect of giving us just a walkway plus the main path. So that's pretty cool. Before we get onto the entrance plaza here, we can see that we have all these arrows, more cones and stop signs kind of throughout this area. So pretty cool stuff. But here is the entrance plaza. So I'm going to get rid of the menu here. We have trash cans, we have flowers, all that kind of stuff. Just generic things that you would see. And it's very simple. A lot of hills added in, just as you would see in this area of the country. And I'm really happy with how it turns out. It's very simple. You got giant oaks here, as you would see in a place that has, more age here. And these oaks are huge and they're beautiful and provide a ton of shade for guests walking to the entrance. So I just absolutely love this. I got this inspiration from Canada's Wonderland, from their old entrance. I've not seen their new entrance, but just used what's on Google Earth, which is from 2011, I believe. It's kind of crazy it's that outdated. But this is before they built their Giga Coaster, Leviathan. But yeah, these nice hills kind of giving a separation from the parking lot. You're still going to see the cars and stuff, but it kind of gives you this feel of going into a new world. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the next update, which we'll see a beautiful Americana entrance here. All right, here we are with the incomplete entrance, little plaza here for Wonder Frontier. It needs to be Wonder Frontiers. I do need to change that. But first, we have this lovely fountain. So cute, so adorable. I just basically learned how to use the symmetry tools in this game, which is hilarious. But you can see that going here with the fountain here, as well as these flowers here for these planters. I also added these lines here just to break up the endless texture going with this brick texture. While it is great, it kind of gets boring with it just being endless patterns. So I added these little slabs. They're 3D pieces, but these little slabs here to make it feel a little more realistic. But anyways, let's talk about the main event here, this entrance. So we have a nice clock tower here right in the middle with those Lake Destiny colors, which is yellow and teal, which we don't obviously see that, and you don't know what that means unless you saw my Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 park, which no one here has. So anyways, I decided to go with this font right here. I think it's Rancho. It might actually be Rancho. I can't remember the name of it. Let's find out here. It is Aladdin. All right, Aladdin. My wife pointed out that it looked a little spooky, and I kind of agreed, but it also kind of was time appropriate, in my opinion, from reference images I was looking at, like Geauga Lake, or however you say that. I forget. I should know as a theme park nerd. So I decided to keep that, and I gave it this nice red, white, and blue depth kind of texture going here with the Tennessee and the actual Tennessee hex color, Tennessee blue there. So this entrance kind of came from inspiration of Six Flags Over Georgia. That their entrance has been pretty much the same since the 60s from what I could find. And it doesn't look like that, but believe it or not, I got a lot of inspiration from that, as well as from Carowinds. I did not want to make this a plantation house for obvious reasons, but I went ahead and made it more of this like Boston, Massachusetts, like Americana kind of style. So there's quite a bit of details in this. I mean, this build itself has, 1,700 pieces, almost 1,800 pieces, and I have yet to even add the ticket booths in here yet. So I did copy and paste this piece over here just to show the symmetry. Oh, ignore that. I forgot to delete that. Gosh darn it. Spoilers. So eventually there'll be ticket booths here and like chain fence kind of stuff, and that'll come in the next video. This build right here, just all of this, took me probably 4 hours, which is absolutely nuts, but there's a lot of detail. We have these turnstiles in here that I made completely from scratch. These are all 3D pieces that I made, and if you get close, it kind of looks a little sloppy, but from a distance you cannot tell. It really reminds me of Disney's turnstiles that they had back in the day, and that's missing that piece. That's fun. And I love them. They turned out so great, except the fact that some pieces are missing, and I'm not sure. That must have happened when I copied it over, because I originally built this side. So now that I'm doing this video and seeing that, I'll have to go fix that. So yeah, here's a little more. Here's what it should look like. So we have our exit on the outsides here. It's an exit only thing, and then you'd imagine there'd be an employee at the either side kind of checking, and then we'd have employees at the turnstiles checking people's tickets. We also have this kind of like the back check, and also for handicap as well to go through here, and that mirrors on either side. So we have oh no, that's another thing I need to go and fix. I had this lovely planter cut out, and there was grass and mulch here, so I'll have to go fix that. That's unfortunate. I love when I find these things after I work and make the video. But there's that. And all of this is pretty much done by hand. These little pieces here, that is all custom. The flags I kept default, and I really think that's all I got with this entrance. There is a little bit of an interior here for for our guest services area, as he's kind of clipping into the counter there. I use these sci-fi pieces to make it look like old box computers. I probably could go a little more custom, but I thought that was kind of a fun little Easter egg. And then we have our door here, and just some pieces with some clipboard. So nothing too crazy, but it's nice little guest services. And the other side is group sales, as you would see early days. So yeah, I think that's really all I got for this update. Let's go ahead and jump over to the last thing, which is a time-lapse build of our coaster, our first roller coaster. I'm really excited. So let's go ahead and jump into that, and I'll see you at the end. Now is my favorite time of making a video, which is doing a voiceover over a time-lapse. It's a lot of fun. First, I want to just give a big thank you to everyone who has been watching the channel over the last couple weeks. I uploaded a Vekoma video where I kind of did a challenge video. I did a challenge video with parameters and all that kind of stuff. And it's almost at 5,000 views right now, and it's gotten me a ton of subscribers. So if you're coming from that video, say hello. I had a lot of fun with that video, and I've been wanting to make a park for a while now, so I'm having a lot of fun editing this one and getting this part going. You're seeing me build a classic aerodynamics looping coaster. I'm not sure the official manufacturer name. Aerodynamics been out of business for a long time. Probably just like a sit-down coaster, I would imagine. But this is very heavily inspired by Carolina Cyclone at Carowinds. That was one of my favorite roller coasters as a kid. I think it was actually my first roller coaster that had an inversion on it, now I'm thinking about it. And this one had 4. So Carolina Cyclone broke the record in 1980, I believe it was 1980, for having the most inversions on a roller coaster, which was 4. So with this park being opened in like 81, 80-ish, I imagine that was kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, let's build a roller coaster that either breaks or ties a record for whenever we open the park. And with it opening in 81, it wouldn't have beat the record, and the record actually would have been set the next year again by Viper with 5 inversions. So a little bit of lore there. I'm having a lot of fun, as you can see, with these supports, and I'm very grateful they added them in the game. The lift hill doesn't seem totally steep enough, but once you back away from it, it actually does feel pretty good. There's a ton of different iterations happening here with the layout, as you can see. It changes quite a bit here in the beginning. A lot of moving parts, but ultimately the vision kind of stayed the same. With this being in Tennessee, there's got to be a lot of hills, and that's something that, for some reason, in my previous builds, I've kind of struggled with, which is just general terraforming. So one more challenge to add to this park is playing with terraforming and kind of making this landscape a little less flat as we go along. Having this hill crest here to separate from the highway, which will obviously have fence and trees there too eventually, really does create a nice separation for the boundary of the park. Most of this coaster ends up, or all the elements, I should say, of this coaster end up being custom supported, and then all of the generic pieces, have the in-game supports, which actually are pretty accurate to aerodynamics. It's not perfect, but it's pretty accurate. You're going to see me struggle here for a few minutes and actually cut a lot of it out, making a custom corkscrew. What I do in a minute, I'm not sure why I didn't think of to begin with. Pretty much all of these aerodynamic looping coasters, sit-down coasters, have curves that go into corkscrews. And in the game, it has a flat piece that then goes into the corkscrew underneath the special element. So I had to make this custom if I wanted to make this more realistic. And I take just 2 corkscrews off to the side and bring them in and basically just sketch them like you would a drawing on paper, which is actually, it worked out fantastically. I think it looks really smooth at the end. POVs at the end of this, by the way, if you're looking forward to that. But yeah, this was the biggest challenge of making this entire ride, which is getting these corkscrews right. Big thank you for several of you for suggesting banking offset. As you can see, I'm not using it right now, but that's only because I'm mimicking the banking on the game's corkscrew. But you can probably, if you were paying attention to that, you saw earlier on for all the banking I had, which doesn't ever go past 45 degrees, by the way. I had banking offset at 3 meters, and I do think it helps a ton. It helped with the heart lining and that kind of stuff. This is a coaster type that's much easier to build than the Vekoma 11. Oh, I think it's 1101. I can never get it right. It's 1101 or 1110, one of the two. Much easier to build than a custom one of those. So this plus this is a ride type that I've been on so many different aerodynamic sit down coasters in my lifetime. So it's pretty easy to make this. It's a classic ride. This is my second stab, really, I think, at making a custom train. I would love some advice here where it comes to making all the trains look the same. Is there an option to make it the same? I could probably just Google search it, but sometimes Google searching does not work great for this game. Because I had to copy and paste all this to the other train, which is weird. And I did that with Speed Force as well, with that train design. 3D art shapes are turning out to be my best friend in this game, and it makes the super simple design here really pop out with just those 3D rectangles here, and the star has a very simple design, but it looks just like you would see in an aerodynamics coaster. I remember when I was playing Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and custom scenery wasn't a thing. So you actually saw this in the screenshot earlier with Wonder Lake. I had to make these aero custom supports using the 4x4 meter boxes that came in the game, and they looked atrocious. So the fact that these are default scenery pieces in game is awesome, and I'm extremely happy with Frontier for keeping these in the game and allowing us to use these, because this would take me so long to make by hand with just 3D shapes and support pieces. So big props and big thank you to you guys at Frontier for that. This look is it screams classic steel coaster to me. I couldn't leave out one of these for a early 80s, late 70s theme park design. It's just that iconic look that you get from an aerodynamics coaster that I absolutely love. And they're fun to make. I mentioned it at the end of this, but I had an absolute blast just making this ride and custom supporting it. The loop, which we'll get to in a second, was probably the biggest challenge, but I think this is kind of where the challenge started. Just trying to get this piece to line up and look like actual aerodynamic coasters in real life. Like I was using a lot of reference pictures, mostly of Carolina Cyclone, but I was looking at some other ones too. And man, it was just interesting getting the angles and all this kind of stuff right and making sure the supports look correct. Running out of things to say here. I don't have to talk this entire time, but I kind of feel obligated to. I was very much a loose cannon in my last video, and I'm not really feeling that energy right now as much as I did when I made that video. But I think that's kind of the reason that video had the charm that it had, at least in my brain. Okay, I can talk about this here. These supports. I'm so glad that, again, I know I talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 a lot, but like, that's really where I come from. I didn't play Planet Coaster 1 a whole ton. Like, I'm pretty sure I've almost put more hours in Planet Coaster 2 than I have in Planet Coaster 1. So a lot of the hours I put in doing simulation games was in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 over 10 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago. But I'm just grateful that we have these base game supports and 3D shapes, because I feel like you can do quite a bit with it. I struggle here for a minute trying to get the exact piece that you see on an aerodynamics looping coaster. I think I got it decently close. It's definitely not perfect. It could be cleaned up a little bit. I kind of gave up after probably 20-30 minutes. I cut a lot of stuff out, by the way. About 20 to 30 minutes of me like poking around trying to get these triangle pieces to line up and not be blocky. I come up with something that works decently well. You'll see it here in a second. And it's like copy and pasteable pretty easily. That's another thing. Man, copy and paste is my best friend in this game, especially when you're doing custom supports. I wanted to do the aerodynamic. Actually, wanting to do this is, I wouldn't say I wanted to do it. I eventually want to do the aerodynamic corkscrew old school supports, but for this era, they didn't have that. They had these kind of just thicker supports that you'll see here momentarily. And having the scale tool in this game versus in Planet Coaster is a huge improvement for custom supporting, because I don't have to like rely on the sizes they give me. I can just make them look as close to as they do in real life, and I think these are almost perfect. It looks fantastic. I think I did this whole build in like 4 to 5 saves, and it's actually kind of funny that this ends up being most of the video. I mean, a lot of the video is just parking lot and entrance, and that's not super exciting, and I recognize that. Usually I would have made this like a separate video than I would have including it in the first video of this park. But two thoughts on that. The first thought is I want this to be more of a documentary style approach to making Planet Coaster videos. And when I say documentary, I don't mean like, you know, nature documentaries and the film style. I mean, I just want to document what I'm doing and when I do it. Like, I don't necessarily need to make this like a crazy huge thing. I mean, quite frankly, I'm going to burn out if I do that. And that's why so much of this first episode is, quite frankly, super ADHD, because I go from one thing to the other. Like, I couldn't just build the parking lot or build the road for 4 to 5 hours of gameplay. Like, I had to like separate them out and go through and edit things. So you might see a lot of that at first, but as we get into this series, you'll see a little more focused builds, I would say. I did completely forget to record this helix. I just forgot to press record. I was pressing record and unrecord so many times during this session, just because I was going back and forth between looking at videos and POVs and stuff that I didn't want to have to cut it all in post. So my bad for forgetting that, but it's nothing too crazy. I used the off-bank 3 again there, and it has a nice little look there, just like Carolina Cyclone and other rides, like the one Carolina Cyclone's clone in Las Vegas. I forget the name of it. I wish I knew more about roller coasters now, like I used to, but it'll come with time. But anyways, I believe this section is wrapping up here. We're getting pretty close to getting on a POV, so I'm going to stop yapping here, and I'll catch you in past Logan form. And there is the Dixie Daredevil. This was so much fun to build. I have made coasters similar to this in the past, especially for Wonder Lake. If you go back to the original one, you can see there's a red and yellow custom aero looping coaster. I believe it had 1 loop and 2 corkscrews. It's been over a decade since I built that ride, and I have recreated it. It was in the Planet Coaster version of Wonder Lake that doesn't exist in the storyline, really. I will be remaking that park, by the way, eventually. But this coaster was an absolute joy to make. It is basically a clone of Carolina Cyclone from Carowinds. That is a pretty common clone back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I figured since Ospreyland had a very similar aero coaster, I figured I would outclass them with a double looper and 2 corkscrews, which I would say was built after Carolina Cyclone. Well, it would be because Carolina Cyclone, excuse me, I think was built in 77. I'll put the correct answer on screen here. But decided to make this a custom layout here. So you just watched the POV of it. I'm excited to work on the station and this area around it. That will be probably in the next update. But before we end this video, I'll roll on over here to the entrance plaza and kind of just talk about what we need to do here. So we need to build, as I mentioned earlier, we need to build the ticket booths and then kind of just close in this area and close in this area so there's more of a backstage presence. And then we're going to have an entrance plaza in here, obviously, that is going to kind of be a little smaller. I'll try to mask this side. There probably will be fences and that kind of stuff. I don't have a plan totally yet, and that's why you don't see it here. So I won't go into super big detail. I do know that I want to include a little concrete slab here for a stage. So you can kind of see where the park is kind of forming. My goal, as of right now, is to really kind of just fill in this part of the park right here. It's kind of just all of this right here. And then we'll start expanding as we go through the years over here to, you know, just give more eye-grabbing attractions for people driving on the highway. And then obviously we'll expand all over here. So I would imagine this would be forest in real life, but because I don't want to destroy my computer, I'm not going to put those trees down. But it's a build in progress. It's not going to be 100% accurate to our story, but it's going to be very exciting. We obviously can see that I need to finish adding these S-bends here and then these curves. It takes a long time to put down these 3D pieces, so I'm gonna do that eventually. That'll be in the next update. I just before I lost steam and lost inspiration, I wanted to do the things that were currently in my mind, which was this entrance plaza and making the park's first roller coaster. So I have a lot more plans I'm gonna keep to myself because they often do change when I say plans on videos. So I'm gonna keep them to myself, but I know the kind of attractions that I want to see, and that comes to where you play in. Now that my channel is growing, you know, my last video, the Vekoma video, really popped off. Thank you so much for that. I've gained almost 200 subscribers from that. If you're enjoying this, go ahead and subscribe and leave a like. That really helps out the channel. But most importantly, with me kind of growing traction on YouTube here, I want this to be more of a collaborative park. So if you have examples of rides from, you know, the 70s and 80s, I would love to hear from you. What kind of rides you would love to see in this park? And give me even examples. Like if you say, hey, I really like this log from this park, you know, I'll look into that and maybe take inspiration from that. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. This has been a blast. This video series is gonna be more of a documentary style, more than it is like a storytelling. We'll see how it goes eventually, but I really want to document the journey of at least starting this park, and then once the park is at a place where I feel like it is operational and guests are in the park and it is like year 1 ready, I'll probably start doing more story line updates. All right, that's enough yammering. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment what ride you love to see me build in this park, and just give me a like and a subscribe because that's cool. Most of my viewers are not subscribed, so hit that subscribe button. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, real quick. There, I fixed it. Bye.